Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. This is our first return guest.
It's a first. It's a first.
I'm so amazing. Oh, Saundra Davis is our first return guest. She was in our episode that aired on June 23rd. And as I said back then in June, Saundra, well, she's amazing. She's a financial coach, a speaker, an educator, and a consultant. And she is the head of Sage Money. And she does a lot of work with closing the racial wealth gap for a, much more robust introduction for Saundra. Please go back and listen to the episode from June 23rd. And, we'll put links to all of Saundra's information in this episode too, but definitely go and check out all of the good things that Saundra has done and is continuing to do. So Saundra, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me back. I've really been looking forward to this.
Oh, so have we.
We should talk a little bit about why we wanted to have Saundra back on the show, as she is our first.
Well, so one of the reasons why Saundra is back on is because October is Financial Planning Month. A perfect time to have Saundra on to talk about all things money. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have Saundra on to talk more about money and financial planning and all of this is because I grew up basically in, sort of a financially insecure household. Sometimes things were better than others, but there was always that feeling of uncertainty. And so money for me is tied up with a lot of emotion. And I come to money and money discussions with this feeling of scarcity and lack. And that's something that I struggle with. Like, that's something I'm trying to work through and basically come away from. One of the great things about having Saundra on is that hopefully she'll be able to help all of us who struggle with this sense of lack and insecurity and everything with money, but be able, even with all that, to still be able to talk about money in a way that is healthy for us and can help us move forward with hopefully building our wealth and thinking about money in a healthier way.
I think empowered way, in an empowered way.
Yeah. Yes, that is a very good way to think about it. Yes.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I wanted to have Saundra back was because I know a lot of women who thought they were financially secure, and for whatever reason, but most of the reason being divorce, came out thinking, well, I'm abandoned now. I wasn't the main breadwinner. I didn't take care of our finances. I don't know anything about money. And I recently saw a show called Maid on Netflix. And I don't know if anyone saw that. It's about a woman who's in a domestic violence situation and she's trying to get out of it. And it just so much tied up how if we don't have control or understand our own finances or how the world works or how money works, we really can put ourselves in a powerless situation to someone else. And so I would like the knowledge for all women. This is a feminist podcast. I just want women to be empowered with money so that is not something they are dependent on a man to take care of for them. That's how I feel about it. And I knew she was coming back, but then I saw Maid and I'm like, oh, that we have to have this. We have to have it. So
yeah, I like that.
I did want to mention that Raquel is going to link in the show notes a couple of documents that Saundra is going to go over with us, but it would be really cool if you're driving your car, not if you're out jogging, but if you're sitting down at a desk and you're listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube video, maybe print those documents ahead of time or at least look at them, because they can be very helpful. As Raquel and I are looking at our finances with Saundra, you, the listener, could also look at your finances with Saundra as well. That would be really cool.
The two documents are the Wheel of Life and the Financial Planning Checklist.
All right, teach us.
All right. So I will say first, as is always the case, I like for us to have a minute to arrive. One of the things Raquel mentioned is kind of noticing that even the idea of talking about money can cause some stressors, right? And so the first thing we can do is just notice that, and we can notice what's happening for our breathing, right? Just see where our breath is. Yeah, we can see where our breath is. We can see where our shoulders are, right? We can
shake it out.
Yeah, we can see what our jaw is doing, right? Is there tension? Is there tension in our lower body? Anything happening in our stomach? And we can just take a breath in and let it out, releasing everything that you're noticing that doesn't feel good. And let's do that one more time, just breathing in and letting that go. So what's the first thing you notice now?
I'm excited.
Yeah. And so the first thing I want to offer is a lot of what you all are describing is financial trauma, right? So financial trauma is a thing. It can happen when we're young and we're in families that feel financially insecure. And I want to be clear, that doesn't only happen when families are experiencing poverty. That can happen when there's a lot of money and it still doesn't feel like enough. So this isn't exclusive to people who actually don't have enough. It's also possible to have more than you will ever need and still feel like there isn't enough, still feel worried about it, because money is emotional.
Okay.
It is emotional. There's so much shame that can go into whether we have it, whether we don't, how did we get it? Are we able to keep it? Once we get it, are we being jerks about having it? There's just all kinds of things. Does someone else control me with money? Do I control others with money? Right? So there are just so many dynamics as to how all of this plays out. It's just really important that you first allow yourself the grace to start wherever you are, right? So whether you feel like you're good with money or there's some things that you want to learn, the point is to start by accepting exactly where you are. And anytime you notice the shame, anytime you notice the anxiety, just do what we just did, right? To just notice it and breathe. And then if you're in a place where you can deal with it in that moment, great. If not, decide when do you have the level of safety, emotional safety that you need to be able to deal with whatever financial concerns you have. So rather than just kind of press through, which is sometimes in our society here in the US, we just like, just get through it. The only way through it, the only way to it is through it. And, there's all of that is true. And when trauma is present, when anxiety is present, when financial distress from scarcity or excess is burdensome, that may not be the best approach. It may make sense to take a step back before going forward. Right? So I'm going to pause for a moment. What comes up for you when you hear that?
You don't hear that a lot from the some of the top like financial, like the famous financial people, right? Which, for the most part, most of the top ones are men.
Yeah. And so it doesn't sell books.
Right. And well, yeah, exactly. You don't hear that from a lot of, sort of the financial celebrities, I guess, for lack of a better word. Although I do notice that there's a new crop of financial, I don't know, pundits. I don't know, that's probably not the best word, but people who are coming at it from the viewpoint that you're talking about, Saundra, of giving yourself grace and trying to maybe not judge yourself so harshly.
Yeah. More people are getting it. It is not traditionally how it's been treated here in this country and quite frankly around the world, to be perfectly frank. There are more people who are understanding that we've done more harm than good by shaming, blaming, and abusing people. So I've been beating this drum for about 20 years now. And so I'm really grateful to see that more people are recognizing that financial shame doesn't support us. It doesn't help us. And it certainly doesn't change anything any more than abusing a smoker changes their desire to smoke. Right. And so research verifies this. There's actually even a book, you mentioned the word scarcity. There's a book called Scarcity. And that book talks about how when you are in financial distress and from that ongoing trauma that scarcity can create, you are actually less inclined to be able to make good decisions. Because you're thinking about, and he uses the analogies. It's actually a YouTube video that's amazing by the author. He uses the analogy of luggage, right? So if I'm going on a trip and I have a lot of pieces of luggage, I can put in all of the things, right? I can put in all the things. I can, bring different outfits for different times of day. I can do all kinds of things, right? If I can only take one, I've got to be a lot more cautious. And then every time I'm thinking about putting something in, I have to think about what am I willing to take out? When we have less, we have to work overtime to try to manage what we can do. And then what do we have to give up? And that's why when people, when our society, when our government, when our social services system shames people who are on public benefits or shames people who are in financial struggle, we're actually doing the opposite of what we say we want. We say we want to help them be more independent and to be more empowered. To Jennifer's point, what we're actually doing is causing that wound to fester. What my hope is in our time together today, when we look at the wheel of life, and the reason that I'm using the wheel of life, there's also a financial wheel, but I'm using the wheel of life because what I'm hoping is people make the connection that everything affects everything. Everything affects everything. There's no aspect of our lives that money doesn't touch. And so as we look at what's happening in our lives, we can look at where money lives. And then when we get to the financial planning checklist, what I'm going to be inviting everyone to do is look at all of the topics and then identify if you wanted to do something differently, where would you begin? And I do mean if, not you should, not why don't you, or haven't you thought about, none of that. If you were ready to try something new, what would it be? And then there's some steps that I'll share with you all. The reason that Financial Planning Month, which is every October, the reason that's such a big deal is that for many years, financial planning was exclusive for the wealthy. People who didn't have a lot of money felt like, oh, I don't have anything to plan with. And the fact is, the less you have, the more proactive you have to be with planning. Back to the suitcase, right? If I only have one suitcase, I've got to think about what pair of shoes am I going to put in there that I can wear with multiple outfits? What if I'm doing some evening things and some daytime things, right? Same thing with our money. Same thing with our money. If my resources are limited, I actually have to be more thoughtful about what I do with them. Because if I have enough or even more than enough for some people, I have room to make mistakes. I have room.
Right.
But if I have a little, I don't have a lot of room for mistakes.
Right.
And the fact is, we live in a society that by definition can be economically oppressive. Right now in September of 2022, gas prices are crazy. I don't know about you, but I went to one of the big box stores about 2 months ago, and I was able to get out of there with about a $250. I only go once a month. So $250 went last month. It was $400 for the exact same stuff
Yep.
that
Wow.
I bought
Yeah.
2 months ago. And so there are some external things. There's internal things. There's our behaviors, there's our attitudes, there's those things, but then there's also external things. And we can't ignore that those external things can actually cause us to be in financial distress in ways that having better behavior is just not going to change. It's not going to change things. So what I'm hoping for everyone who's listening, whether you're listening, is to know that irrespective of where you are now, if there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be, you can decide the steps and you can plan the steps in a way that feel empowering for you. So you can begin to grasp your own pathway, get the information you need. Sometimes we don't know, right? Sometimes we just don't know. Get the information that you need and then decide how to implement what you know. I was on a webinar yesterday, and one of the gentlemen said, the worst financial plan that is implemented is better than the best financial plan that has no action. Even if you say, I'm going to focus on one thing a month, or one thing a quarter, or one thing a year, that's better than trying to get a perfect plan that you take no action on.
That makes total sense.
The list is going to be long. And the reason the list is long is there's a lot to our financial lives. But I want people to recognize that you are in control. You are your best expert. You might need information, right? You can get information. And you are the best expert in your own life, whether it's money, whatever else is going on. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, if I may. This first thing is the wheel of life. And this is something that coaches use, all kinds of coaches, executive coaches, life coaches, career coaches. The reason we use this is that it allows us to take a step back and take a look at how satisfied we are with our lives. You'll notice there's topics, right? Finances, relationships, health, fun, home, personal growth, work, and then there's a box there for other. The first thing that I want you all to think about is, does this wheel reflect your life? Now, you can write, like some people write travel, right? Some people do things like say, well, my health is my mental health and my physical health. You can change the wheel to suit you. So with work, it might be, I've got a job, but then I've also got a small business. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is take a moment to make the wheel yours. And what that means is, are the topics that are there relevant? And are there any topics that are missing? So I'm going to give you a moment to just think through that. And then you tell me what changes I should make on the wheel. Now, what we're going to do, Jennifer, both you and Raquel, you're going to do your own wheels, right? But I'm going to be marking up just so that people can have an experience of what it's like to go through the process. So I'll be kind of marking some things. Some of it will be based on what you say. Some of it'll be kind of random things. So don't be alarmed. But you do track your own wheel as we're going through. What do you think about these categories? Do they fit?
For me, they mostly fit when I look at it. The one thing I would change, just because when I made a list of my life priorities, when I look at relationships, I put my relationship to myself, number one, and then to my children, and then to a romantic relationship. So those are kind of separate for me now, right now, because I need them to be. And I know a lot of people probably put it all together. And then the other thing that I see is I have a personal commitment to possibly running a marathon someday. So on the other, I would put running as its whole total thing. And I know not everyone's going to do that, but that's what I would do because it's a big piece. And then on my work spot, because I've recently left my job, and this is not going to be true for a whole lot of people, my work is to write my novel right now. So, or to write my book.
So would you line through work and write book, or would you leave it there so that it's identified as work for you and then novel is under it?
Well, getting real personal, because I don't know if this reflects everyone. I still do a little consulting, so that's work. I do a podcast. I consider that some work I do during the week. And I consider my writing work, and I'm taking a class. So I would put all 4 of those under my work umbrella, because that when I sit down in the morning to do my work, those are the topics.
Got it. So I'm going to put book plus.
Yeah,
right.
But I know what it means.
And I'll say this, on your own wheel that you all are doing while we walk through this, write all of this stuff down, make this yours, because that's what's really, really important. That when you look at this, and I do this for myself every year, and I'll say more about that in a moment. But the reason that that's part so important is that I want to know where I am in my satisfaction. I can be doing all the right stuff and not be satisfied.
What about you, Raquel? Did you change the wheel?
Yeah. What did you add?
I did. For work, I have that split between the podcast and my regular job, my 9 to 5. Not that I see the podcast as, work like drudgery, but it's as important to me as...
It's passion work.
Yes, it's passion work. Right, exactly. It is as important to me as, regular job. And I think it provides for me a certain amount of satisfaction of doing a job well done. So I put the podcast and my regular job there. I split health between mental and emotional and then physical. For my personal growth, one thing that goes into that I want to do more of is reading, partly because of the podcast. I've been doing a lot more reading, so that's cool. And then, when I looked at the relationship one, it occurred to me that, well, it's not the first time this occurred to me, but it sort of jumped out at me that relationships for me are literally like just friends and family. Like there's no
romance.
No focus. Yeah, there's no focus on romance.
There's no romance.
I
think your partner's been telling you this for a while.
Yeah, I know. There is no romance. So relationships for me, that's just one pie.
Yeah. So what do you notice about this exercise already? What's happening for you?
For me, it really solidifies where my priorities are. There was a time when what Raquel's saying about relationship that I didn't necessarily, the romance was not a priority, right? But for the last several years, my self-love has been a huge priority. And I think the wheel of life just solidifies the priorities that I've made. And it can also just easily point out where I'm been a little off track on what I said was my priority.
Yeah. Raquel, how about you?
Well, my first thought was, wow, there's a lot that goes into this. It isn't just home and work. There's a whole lot that goes into it. And maybe I don't put as much thought into the other areas, and maybe I do need to put some more thought into some of the other areas, like fun. Like, it's not to say that I don't have fun, but I think I maybe need to I need to have more of a focus on that.
Because you have always said from the very beginning of this podcast that you don't want to just survive, you want to thrive.
Yes.
So actually, Raquel, I'll ask you to write that at the top of your document, right? You'll notice you'll notice I wrote my priorities because that's what I heard, Jennifer, from you. And so what I'm inviting you to do is at the top, keep in mind where you're headed. What is the point of doing this? So I'm going to go through the larger topics, so finances, relationships, so on and so forth. And you'll notice that there's some numbers there, and then there's the 1 here and the 10 here. And so what we're looking at is our level of satisfaction, not whether we have it or not, but how satisfied we are, right?
This is in depth.
Right? How satisfied we are with each thing. Now, I'm going to stay with the larger topics, but for you all, and if you don't have time while we're on the call, that's okay. But I'd like for you to fill in, like if you've split up the pie, split it, make sure that you're filling in all of the sections that matter to you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you all to give me your number for the larger category, and then you will put in your information for the more detailed categories separately. Okay. So where should we begin? I'm going to ask Jennifer, you pick what is going to be our starting point.
Well, I say we go for finances and then go around.
We'll start at finances. Okay.
Smart.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, what rating for level of satisfaction? Now, again, this isn't whether you have it or not. This is how satisfied you are with wherever you are right now. And then what number is that?
And we're saying this out loud?
Yeah, well, you can to your comfort level. Yes.
Yeah, I'm an 8.
Okay. Raquel, if you want to say yours out loud, you can. If not, just write it. I'm mainly just showing what does it look like to do the wheel. So I really only need one person to say.
You know what? I'll go ahead and say, I mean, one thing about our podcast is that Jennifer and I are pretty open and candid about things. So, why not?
Okay. Your level of satisfaction.
I'd say a 4.
Okay.
And that's why we're on this podcast, Raquel.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is true.
To be clear, there are people who have a lot and are not satisfied. And there are people who have a little and are very satisfied.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want everyone to remember, this isn't a self-judgment opportunity, right? This is a where am I?
Okay, can we say that again? Because I think I need to hear that.
Yeah. So I will
this
say,
is not a self-judgment exercise.
No, because it doesn't serve you. This is a where am I? Right. And so notice, Raquel, I noticed when Jennifer said the 8, you had a reaction, right? It was a positive reaction. And I suspect that may have triggered a sense of discomfort for you about where you are. Right.
I always have a sense of discomfort about where I am with money.
Yeah. And so just notice what comes up.
Okay.
Right? Just notice what comes up. And one of the things you all can do is use the space to like write any notes, any keywords that come up, anything that comes up for you, because this is something I'm urging you or inviting you to do for yourself once a year, so that you can see where you are. Your priorities may change. What thriving means to you may change, and you get to track where you are. So if we're going to look at the larger relationships category, where would that be now?
I'm at a 7.
Okay.
I would say I'm at an 8 with that. I feel really, really good about the relationships that I have. I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by really amazing people. So,
So also this is an opportunity. And I usually do this at the end, but I want to say it now. You can write what it means. So what I generally do at the end when I'm doing this with one person is when we get to the point where the wheel is done and they choose a topic for us to focus on, I'll ask, so what does a 7 mean? Right? And you might describe, well, a 7 means that I see the people that I care about, I spend time with them, and so you're clear about when you wrote it. What did you mean? Mm-hmm. So I'll invite you after our call to do that so that you have a memory of what this meant for you. Okay, so let's go to health.
I am a 7.
Okay.
I would say for mental and emotional, a 7, 7 or an 8.
Okay, pick one, 7 or 8.
Let's go with 8.
Okay.
But for physical, 5.
Okay. What do you notice about my tone when you say your numbers?
That you're very kind and even keeled, regardless of what the number is. It's okay. Whatever the number is, it's okay.
So
your tone is just your tone.
So when you're doing this without me and you're noticing your tone to yourself is different, what would Saundra say? right? So maybe we should do that as a t-shirt, right? What would Saundra say? So that you remember, no matter what the number is, that you're holding yourself with grace and kindness. All right.
Yes.
All right, let's go to fun.
Fun is an area where I score a little lower. I only give myself a 6, which is surprising because I'm busy all the freaking time.
Maybe a 5.
Okay.
Only because I can be more proactive about fun. Like I take almost every opportunity to have fun.
Okay.
But it's usually other people who are making the suggestion or making the plan. Got it. Yeah, I think I can be a more active participant in my fun.
Got it. Well, one of the things I noticed is you almost used the S word. I should.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'll just invite you to notice, as far as the satisfaction, you know, maybe a word that feels more supportive, like I'd like to have more fun. I'd like to be more proactive about, right? And so try not to should on yourselves.
Got it.
Right? As you're doing this, try not to should on yourselves. All right, let's go to home.
5.
Okay.
7.
Okay. All right. Personal growth, whatever that means for you.
9.
Okay.
8.
Work.
It's gonna surprise everyone because I quit my job, but I'm going for a 10.
All right.
Or maybe that makes sense now.
You know, that's the thing. That's the thing, right? Raquel?
I would say with the podcast, definite 10.
Okay.
With my regular job, which I'd say a 7.
Okay. I'll just remind you that you can decide what regular means.
Okay.
Right? So when you say regular, what are you telling yourself?
Okay.
Okay. So just make a note of that. What are you saying to yourself when you say regular?
Okay.
Right? What does that mean to you? All right. And last is other. We have running as one category. And Raquel, if you have something to put there, feel free to do that as well.
Yeah, I put travel for mine.
Jennifer, what's your number?
7. Okay. And I just connected some dots here.
Let's hear
part
about
of
that.
the reason, part of the reason my fun number is so low is because I'm not really enjoying the running right now.
Oh.
Whereas a lot of my fun used to be in the running activities.
Got it.
And I'm not really enjoying it right now.
Make yourself a note. Make yourself a note. Yeah. Everything affects everything. That's why we do the wheel. Raquel, what do you want to say about travel?
I have a 6.
Okay.
I have a trip coming up, which is awesome. So I'm very excited about that. I had a trip I was going to do this week, but that got postponed. But the good thing about that is that it was postponed. It wasn't canceled. So I have stuff on the horizon. So maybe I should change my number.
Okay. What is your number?
Let's put it to a 7.
Okay.
I think that, yeah.
So if you can kind of see through all of my crazy writing and what your numbers were, what do you notice?
The things that have the lower numbers are things that I expected would. And the things that I scored myself really high on, some of those I'm a little surprised at how highly I rated them, because if I just look at everything as a whole, and if I'm having a day, if I'm in a mood, then I don't look at all of the things. I just look at it as one big thing, and I let the mood cloud me, and I just go, bleh, things are awful. Bleh, this isn't what I want. Maybe looking at all the different parts helps me see the good.
For me, it's the same kind of thing, except it helps me to see the opportunity cost. I know I'm not very happy with my home right now and I need new stuff, right? But I quit my job, so new stuff cannot be my priority right now, unless I want to put it on credit cards, which I don't. already knew going into this that I'm not happy with my home, but I'm not willing to bring that up because I'm so happy with the not working. I mean, that's
Right.
really nice,
But
right?
that you're making that connection, and that's really what we're talking about. And when we look at this, right, and of course this is a combined wheel, so it's not as clear, but you'll notice that flow. And this is the reason people might be saying, well, I thought we were talking about money. Look, is there anything here that does not have financial implications?
No, not at all. It's
Not
all
at all.
financial.
When we look at our satisfaction, when we look at the things that we're doing, we can align. And like to your point, Jennifer, you could say, I want my home to feel more comfortable, so I'm going to go buy furniture. And that might cause distress in another area.
Yeah, because I'd need to go to work and I don't want to right now.
And so that's the thing, right? And so that is, and the correct word, as you know, is opportunity cost. If I say yes to one thing, I'm saying no to something else. So am I saying yes to the things that I want to say yes to? And am I saying no to the things that I want to say no to? And so the reason that I invite people to do this before we start looking at the laundry list of financial topics is so that there can be a grounding in, okay, what's most important to me? And how do my resources, my time and my money, right? Because so often when we work, we're trading time for money. How do my time and money, the two things, like I can make more money, but I can't make more time.
In relationships too.
Absolutely.
If you spend time with one person versus another person, what are you doing with your time?
Absolutely. If you're spending more time at work than with the people who you care most about. One of the reasons that I love this tool so much is that we can take a non-judgmental, compassionate approach to identifying how we want to spend the things that matter most, our time and our money and our energy.
You're like the meditative financial guru.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of.
Like the whole meditative, it's okay. Let's be present and aware and know what we're doing.
Yeah,
it's
because
so
once
helpful.
we do that, Jennifer, once we do that, we can decide if what we're doing is likely to get us what we want. There are people, and I think Raquel was, kind of talking about this, financial influencers. There's folks who are doing a lot of things that I'm not willing to do. I mean, would I have a bigger presence in the FinTalk or Instagram world? Probably. I'm not willing to do those things. And so for me, it's not a judgment of them. It's just, I'm tired. I'm not trying to be on social media all day, every day. I'm just not willing to do those things. And so for the time that I'm willing to give to my career at this age and stage, I focus my attention on teaching, training, building the next generation of financial professionals, because I don't have the time or the desire to do all of the work myself. That's why I like being with you all is such a gift, because I can share this with you and you're going to share it with your communities, and hopefully they'll begin to do the same thing. So it doesn't rely on Saundra doing this over and over again.
That's an awesome gift.
Yeah, people can recognize, and thank you, sweetheart, because here's the thing. As I said earlier, you are the expert in your own life. Now we're getting ready to look at the financial information, but the financial information has to come in the context of what we just did. When people break up in a relationship, it's often about money. You're not spending enough time with me. I don't like the way that you're spending your money. You care more about the money than you care about me. All of these things. When people go through abusive situations, often the thing that has them staying is this fear that I can't make it on my own. I don't even have enough money to get myself to safety. And so we have to remember that finances aren't everything, but they touch everything. And so as we're doing exercises like this, we can focus our attention on how do we want to run those kinds of things. The next thing, which is our financial planning checklist. And the reason that this financial planning checklist is such a big deal in my world is because I want people to know everything that goes into having a financial life, that they are on a pathway and they're clear about the journey. This document is from a class that I teach called Financial Fundamentals. And what we do is we talk about the financial topic. What are some action steps? You'll notice there's a blank check mark there because you might have an action step that's not the action step that I might recommend, right? And then the priority. And everything, you may have heard the term that if everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. Same thing here. And the target date is, by when do you either want to take the first step or be completed? So the choice is always yours. So I'm going to go through a couple of the topics of what does a comprehensive financial plan entail? And then what are some of the action steps that you can take? And then I'm going to invite you to choose one thing that, if you were ready, willing, and able to change a circumstance, what is one thing that you want to do during financial planning month, the month of October? How does that sound?
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, so the first thing is money management. And that's just our basic systematic way that we approach managing what comes in and what goes out. That's all that means. That's all it means. It gives us a foundation. There's a couple of documents that go with that. How does your cash flow, right? What is your net worth? And your net worth is the difference between what you own and what you owe. That's all. If the bank and I own a house and the house is worth $500,000 and I owe $250,000, and if that's the only asset we're talking about, what is my net worth? $250.
Negative 250. Oh, 250.
No,
Okay.
yeah, because if the house is worth 500, I owe 250. My equity is that other 250, right?
Okay.
So that's all you're looking at, right? Okay. And then how do you maximize your resources? So if I'm going to take that 250, I've got this 250 now. That 250 is not cash. No. That 250 is equity in my home. So there are ways that I can access it. Some ways are safer and healthier than others. That's where leverage, that's the point of leverage. So when Jennifer earlier was talking about credit, right? Originally, debt was designed to be used to build wealth. Y'all probably don't know this, but in 1975, we could actually write off, up until I think about 1975, we could actually write off our interest on credit cards.
Oh, wow.
No way.
Yes way. It wasn't until everyday people, started using credit cards to bridge the gap between income that those things changed. So the tax code changed. So remember when I was talking about systemic issues that can cause people to be in poverty or to not have positive financial lives? A lot of this is not about what happens in our own personal lives. A lot of it is external. Now, do people have to use credit cards? Who knows? It depends. If you have more month than money, you may have to use credit cards.
I've had to.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. I have as well.
Yeah,
and so I want people to understand that this, again, even though we're focusing on financial topics, we're still holding that no shame zone.
Right.
No matter where you are. No shame zone.
No shame.
No matter where you are. So if money management is a priority to you, there's a couple things you can do. You can establish a budget or a spending plan. You can establish a savings plan, or you can budget and save for periodic expenses. So what do I mean when I say periodic expenses? There are some things that just don't happen every month. They're not a monthly expense, right? Car insurance is sometimes every 6 months. Our property taxes for homeowners, our registration for our car, right? So there are some things that only become an emergency because we don't prepare for them. So if it costs me $500 to register my car, instead of panicking in April when it's due, I can divide 500 by 12 and put away a little bit every month. So when April comes, that money's there. And so there's things that we can do to help us manage better. That's one of the first things. Now, emergency savings is having money that's set aside for when stuff happens. You'll notice I distinguish between a periodic expense and an emergency. Now, if you have children in August, what happens? back to school, you got to spend some money. If you have a car, what's going to happen? It's going to break down, right?
I mean, everything.
Right?
Tires.
Exactly.
I mean, everything.
Exactly. And so since we know that, we have to distinguish between things that are a real emergency and things that we know are going to come. An emergency in general is something that is unexpected. We don't want it to happen. And if it does happen, we at least have some relief. We may not have enough money to cover the whole thing, but we've got enough to give us some relief so that we can deal with something that is unexpected.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, please.
My family did teach me about finances and budgeting, and I was also in the banking industry for years, and people would get on my case about not having a budget. And since Raquel and I believe in transparency and honesty, the reason I never wrote that budget out during those years was because I knew how much money I spent versus how much money I had coming in, and my money that I made didn't cover my bills. So I didn't have an extra dollar to put away for the emergency situation or for the situation I knew was coming. I knew that my taxes on my house were going to be due, but I didn't have any extra dollars to put in that account. How does one build a budget knowing that currently in their current state, their finances don't pay the bills?
So first of all,
Okay.
that is like the best question ever.
Can I
Best
just say,
question,
Jennifer, I'm
please.
so glad you said that, because that right there, that is why I have a hard time writing a budget.
That's why I didn't do it. I refused to do it because I knew
Yep.
I was a banker. I saw everything that went in and went out.
Mhm.
But I knew, well, I think I've told you guys this before. My daycare payment over the summer was more than my mortgage, and I had to use credit cards to make it through the summer. I had to. I did not have enough cash coming in to pay what my bills were.
Yep.
So how do we budget knowing we're already at a deficit?
Yes. So the first thing is breathe. Let's do that together.
That's not happening to me anymore, but it's still stressful because I lived through it.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And here's the thing,
Okay.
Jennifer, even when it's not happening anymore, the trauma is still there.
Okay, yeah, shake that trauma loose, shake it loose.
Yes.
The
Yes.
trauma is still there. And that's what we have to remember. And that's why the no shame zone, that's why the breathing, that's why this is also important.
And that's why I think a lot of women face this even more than men. Not to say that men don't face it, but if we have children attached to us, generally it's the woman. If not always, I'm not trying to this is not a bad mouth the men. Generalizing, mostly the women are caring for the financial stability of the children. And yet we start with jobs that don't pay as much.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So that's why there is a gender wealth gap. That's why there is a racial wealth gap, because of those very things. And you know, you're being very kind to just say, caring for the children. We're often caring for our parents. We're often supporting other family members, and we are often not taught the same things around money that men are taught. Yes. There's a woman, I can't remember her name right now, but she's the daughter of the R in H&R Block. And she wrote a book called Prince Charming Isn't Coming. And
damn it.
Yes. Yeah, I know, right? And so, but what was so fascinating to me, Elizabeth Stanley, I think might be her name. I don't quote me on that one. So
we'll look it up.
But here's the thing she said. Her dad, who was a CPA, right, started H&R Block with the H guy. So don't worry about money. I've got you covered. Then she married. Her husband said, don't worry about money. I've got you covered. Until they didn't.
Yeah, I know. That's
Right?
what I'm saying.
If we don't learn these things for ourselves, and no matter how you're partnered, if you're partnered with a male partner or another female partner, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you're partnered with. It's about ensuring that you have sufficient understanding and focus of your own financial life, that if you are on your own, you know what to do for yourself. Right? Mm-hmm. Irrespective of how many people tell you they've got you covered, knowing that, even if it's true, and even if you're fortunate enough to enjoy not having to work, or you enjoy enough financial resources to have your needs met, that if something changed, you would be okay. And that's really what my mission is in doing this work. I want to answer specifically the question about how do you create a plan when you already are operating at a deficit? There's two components to it. There's what happens with the cash flow, what's coming in and what's going out. And then there's where is the gap? And then how are you addressing the gap? So what I recommend that people do is write out all of the income. Where's your money come from? All of the streams. Where is the money going? And then how are you paying for it? Right?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. So my gap came over the summer when my kids were in daycare.
Okay.
And I knew it was a gap. It was quite a big one. At the end of the month, when I didn't have any money left, I put all gas, all groceries on credit cards.
Okay.
And then
so on your budget, though, so let me ask you a pause. So on your budget, all of the things that are available with your cash on hand, I would identify that. All of the things that were going to have to be on credit card, I would identify that. So then when you're looking at it as strictly information. So you don't have to feel ashamed of having to bridge the gap with a credit card. You know, that is your plan.
That would have helped because I did feel kind of ashamed about putting it on a credit card. I felt it physically. It made my stomach hurt. I physically felt ill about that until I got it paid off again.
Exactly. And that's what we don't want. That's what we don't want, because that actually hinders your ability to pay it off in a way that's healthy for you overall. I have, and I still have now, I have a debt reduction plan that goes along with my budget. And I'll share with you all some free tools from Vertex 42. They have these amazing tools. And one of the reasons that this is such a good way to do it is that you know that you're using credit and you have a plan to pay it off. Now, the hard part is, what adjustments might you have to make? There are some people who have cut everything and there's still not enough, right? So there's only 3 things you can do when there's a gap between what you make and what you need. You can make more, spend less, or a combination of the two. That's it. There's no other magic. Make more, spend less, or a combination of the two. If you have to make more, you also have to think about, what are you giving up? That takes us back to the wheel. So if I have to take on an additional job, or Jennifer, to your point, you know, your focus is the book, right? So if you have to take on another job, that's less time dedicated to the book. So you may have to make some choices around cutting areas that might be a little more uncomfortable to cut. And sometimes you might have to take a consulting gig. I mean, there are some gigs, I don't have to do this as much anymore, but there was a time that I would do some consulting projects that I did it because I needed the money to do it. Now I'm fortunate that my income is sufficient to meet my needs, so I don't have to take work that I don't love. But it wasn't always the case. As you're building your budget, you're going to include those line items that are the deficit, because then you can prioritize. Like, for instance, if people have to choose to keep a roof over their head or pay an old credit card debt, guess which one I want them to do?
Keep the roof.
Keep the roof. And there are all kinds of resources. There's a book called Guide to Surviving Debt. It is a lovely book that can help you learn how to deal with issues around debt, even issues around bankruptcy, issues around creating a debt reduction plan. There are ways to deal with that. And then there's also counselors. I'll give you that information so you can share it with the community that can help do these kinds of things, because just continuing to run in a deficit is only going to cause more stress. It might take months. It might even take years to get out of the debt. So recognizing that it may take years to get out of it and having a plan to get out of it. Often what people do is they'll just, well, I'll put a little bit more on this one and a little bit more. That's usually the worst possible way to do a debt reduction. It doesn't allow you to make any big impact that really changes what your cash flow looks like. And that's why I prefer to use a spreadsheet that helps people do that, because then you have a focused plan. So generally, if you're trying to get out of debt, you choose one and you focus more money on that one. and just the minimums on the other one. And you take one at a time. And this spreadsheet I'll share with you actually shows you how to do that. It's simple, but it's not often easy because, to Jennifer's point, if you're already running a deficit, you may not be in repayment mode yet. Right. So the things that you want to make sure, if you are eligible for any public benefits, that you get them. Unemployment, food support, TANF, whatever you're eligible for, get it. If you have children and you are not getting child support, get it. And so often we feel shame around those kinds of things, right? But we don't feel shame about the fact that if you, and Jennifer, you were a banker, so you know this, if I walk into a bank with $1 million to open a deposit, do they charge me any fees on my account?
Nothing.
No. If I walk in with $100 to open an account, what am I paying?
You're probably going to get, I mean, I haven't banked in a while, but back in the day, you probably had a $10 monthly fee and you probably had overdrafts like crazy because you didn't have any money in your account.
Exactly.
Yes.
So those of us who are least able to bear the fees are the ones. Banks make billions with a B on overdrafts.
And if the millionaire got a fee, all they had to do was ask and it got removed.
And so we just have to remember, we're all operating in a financial system that is not designed for people who are not wealthy. Debt was designed to build wealth. And for many people now, debt is just how we're making ends meet.
Or it's a trap.
It can be either way. Payday lenders, credit cards at 28%.
I've noticed, and one of the reasons I got out of banking is because I noticed a trend where they were targeting credit cards to people in college. And I always equated it to cigarettes, like handing out cigarettes on campus. Let's get everyone addicted so that by the time they have a job, they're already paying interest. They're paying, they're already in debt by the time they get out of college.
And they're comfortable with it. And the thing about that is the Credit Card Act of 2010 doesn't allow them to do that on campus anymore. But you can be on an airline. Lovely flight attendant is going to walk down that aisle and they're going to pitch that credit card to you because they get $100 for everyone that fills out one of those applications. And here's the thing, whether you're accepted or not, your credit score takes a hit, even if they say no. And so what's important about this is for us to know these things and understand the impact that these things have. And so when we're looking at, and we've kind of, collapsed in the budgeting, the emergency savings, and the credit and debt management, because those three things are where we have the most control. If you're not earning enough, number one, go to a career counselor, go to a local college, a community college, talk to someone in the career planning office. What things can you do? Whether it is help for your resume. Sometimes you got to change jobs to make more money. Getting a 3% raise is not as fruitful as understanding your skills, pumping up your resume, and marketing yourself to see if you're earning what you're worth.
It's very true.
I want people to hear that I'm not saying just take on a second job. I'm saying making sure you are not underemployed.
Good point.
And sometimes you might have to quit somebody if they're not treating you right. You might have to say, hey, this is the value I'm bringing to this company. It's just really important for us to understand the impact that under-earning, because we can't make that up.
Yeah.
Every year we spend under-earning. It sets us back on our retirement. It sets us back on our savings. It sets us back on our investing.
How do you find out you're underpaid? Do you think I think I'm underpaid, I'm going to start sending out resumes and doing interviews to find out, or is there a simpler way to find out?
You can talk to an HR person. You can go to those places like salary.com. And here's the thing. Are you looking at the real value that you bring? And are you aligning your expectations with the value you bring? My dad used to say a closed mouth doesn't get fed. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. So if you don't ask for it, you'll never get it. When it's time to do that annual review, or when you're doing a quarterly review, one of the things that you might want to say is, I'm at a stage now where my financial needs are not being met to my satisfaction. And I'm wondering, where do you view that potential here for me in the company? What would I have to do? in order to earn the level of salary that I need. So not being afraid to ask for what you need. All they can say is no. And if they say no, that gives you some information.
What if you're in a position that's kind of made up? Like it's literally just a title to encompass that you do a lot of crap.
Oh my God, Raquel, that's
Not
been my
crap,
whole
I mean
life.
stuff.
That's been my whole life.
But so, well, yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Welcome to the
Right.
world, Raquel. How do you do the salary research on that?
Yeah, you look at it all. You look at all of the
Underpaid
things
is what that screams.
Exactly. You look at all of the things that you do, and not only the tasks that you do, but the value that it generates for the organization that you're working for.
How do you calculate the value that you generate?
I have an assistant, and if my assistant doesn't keep track of my calendar, doesn't keep track of my emails, doesn't prepare me for travel, doesn't prepare me for my meetings, then I can't do what I do.
Right.
So I have to pay him well.
Right.
Because I can't do what I do if he doesn't do what he does. And so I had an HR person take a look at that, what that salary range should be. And so that's how we do that. There's so much information out there now, Raquel. I would say really starting with people who teach classes on negotiations. There's all kinds of classes in LinkedIn about negotiating your salaries. There's a lot of information on doing this. And I want to make sure that people understand this conversation came out of under earning. What happens when there's not enough? You can control what you cut. And if what you have to do is make more, it's really crucial that you do a self-evaluation of what you're doing and what you're bringing. You may not know the exact dollar amount of what your value is to the company, but you can start to put together the picture of what you do and what impact it has. Because I can guarantee you the people who employ you know the dollar amount of the value you bring, and they're paying you less than that because they can.
Oh, yeah.
I think what's really interesting about this line of conversation is I think that this is also a huge feminist issue in that part of our conditioning is to not know our value. We know our value when it comes to what we look like, but we don't know our value when it comes to the work we put in. And the other thing that I see is for someone, I can only speak for myself, but parts of my job come very easily to me. And sometimes I think, why would anyone pay me so much for this?
Let me tell you why. What parts of, and you don't have to give me details, but what makes those parts that come easy for you?
It's just like an intuitive knowing. It's my skill. It's what I know how to do. And so I know other people don't know how to do it.
So it's a talent.
Here's the thing.
It's a talent.
It's not only a talent. It's the difference between people paying you for what you know and paying you for what you do. When I set out a contract, I don't get paid by the hour. I don't even have an hourly rate anymore, because what I do and the investment that I made in myself to be as good as I am at what I do, that's what they're paying for. They're paying.
I forget that part.
Yeah, they're paying my student loans. They're paying my student loans. They're paying my hard-earned effort. They're paying for 40 years of experience. So they're not paying me for what I do. They're paying me for what I know. And what I know saves them money because they don't have to make the mistakes that I already see coming. And so that's where we often undervalue ourselves. And what I want people to hear, what I want people to hear is these next three areas: tax planning, asset building, and asset protection. If we don't deal with this part, the under earning, all of those other things are affected. Of course, we know the cash flow is affected, but the rest of your life is affected.
Is it possible to overcome the effect of under earning? Like you said, that for every year that you under earn, you whatever. I think I blacked out at that point, but you know,
it's possible.
Can you overcome that?
It's possible if you really do value what you're bringing and you demonstrate that value and you don't waver. It starts with knowing for yourself first.
Okay.
Right? You got to know for yourself first, right? Okay. And so I would say this is where women can look at classes on negotiation. Look at classes on that help you know how to outline what you do and what you know. See, we place a lot of value on the task that we do, but we
Yes.
don't place much value on, and to Jennifer's point, if it comes easy, we tend to devalue it
Yes.
rather than recognize it as easy because I'm
Right.
good. I make
Right.
it look easy,
Right. Right.
right?
Oh, wow.
But my master's degree, my undergrad degree, 8 years of
all
the
the
Navy,
years I've been doing this.
42 years
Yeah.
of raising a child, and
Yeah.
all of that is what
Yeah.
shows up when you hire me. More than 2,000
Yes.
people that I've trained,
Mm.
documents that I've developed, programs that I've created. You're getting all of that.
It's still very hard to put a monetary value on it.
That's only because we're stuck in our own heads. That's why I say have someone else look at it with you. The
Okay.
reason people hire financial professionals is that we can't see the shadow.
Mhm.
I can give you all of this information, and you can take all of these steps that you see here. If you can't see where you're harming yourself, nothing will change because you
Ooh.
can't see the shadow.
Oh my gosh, more shadow work in
I
everything we're
know.
doing.
Does it mean that I'm in the middle of the shadow right now? God.
You might be, because, well, so here's the thing. Being in the middle of the shadow is better than not knowing the shadow is there,
100%.
because you can't do anything about it if you don't know that it's there. It took me, I got my master's degree in financial planning in 2004. I did not get my estate plan done. I teach people about financial planning. I'm a distinguished professor at Golden Gate University. I didn't get my trust done until 2 years ago. I didn't set up a budget in a system until, well, I say 2 years ago. It's actually been 1 year. But like Jennifer, I knew where my money was going. I used accounts to manage my budget.
Yeah.
The reason that was good for me is that it gave me the flexibility that I needed. The places that it was harming me is that I was often not aware of exactly how much I was spending. Once I became aware of exactly how much I was spending, then I could see the deficit wasn't really a financial deficit. It was a behavior deficit.
Okay.
But I didn't know that.
I think
before.
that's the case for me.
Right. And I'm talking about me. It's not always. It's not always. For me, it was a behavior deficit because I don't like to cook and I'm not that great at it. So I would eat out a lot. But there were other ways that I could manage my food budget that helped me dealing with some of the credit things, dealing with some of the savings things that I wanted to do.
I think I'm pretty aware of where other people would think I overspend. And part of it is in food. It's different than you. I like to cook and I buy really expensive ingredients. Did I do that when I was living on credit cards? No. Do I do that now? Yes.
Yeah.
Could I have better furniture if I didn't do that? Maybe.
And
But
again, that's the trade-off, right?
Right.
And I want to be clear. None of this is with judgment. So those of you who are listening, what I want you to hear is there are times that what we're doing is working. And if it's working, keep doing that. For me, not knowing exactly how much I was spending became problematic because I was getting closer to retirement. I'm 60 plus. I wanted to save more for retirement.
Right.
So I was willing to manage my cash flow differently.
Yes.
Because I had another bigger priority. And so I still eat out. I still don't like to cook, and I'm still not that great at it. Now I just have a budget for how much I spend eating out.
Okay, that would make sense. So,
yeah. My eating out budget is higher than my groceries in the house budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that, I could see you kind of knew it, but you didn't write it down. You didn't know. You could go buy all the groceries, still go out to eat, and then throw the groceries away.
And I've done that too. And
because you weren't aware of what your behavior was.
Exactly.
Therefore, you were throwing it out.
And I've done that too.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And
the
so
budget
now-
the honest budget makes sense.
And the thing is, we have to remember the budget isn't about restricting us. It's about finding our freedom.
Wow.
Okay.
Wait, say that again.
The budget isn't about restricting or taking things away. It's about finding our freedom. What is our pathway to freedom? And controlling our time, controlling our energy, controlling our money is our pathway. So I just want to point out these last three here. The tax planning, I really invite people to learn about free or low cost tax supports rather than going to like a paid tax like H&R Block or those kinds of things, not because they're bad people, but because if you are in the income range that is in the lower income, and you can find that on the IRS website, they actually will prepare your taxes for free at a VITA site, VITA. It's a volunteer income tax assistance. It's also available for seniors. And it's on the irs.gov. It's a very underutilized website, but they have some great information. If you have tax trouble, if you're in tax liability, if you've run into some problems with payments, you can see a tax advocate, a taxpayer advocate. And there are some in most cities, all of the major cities. So if you're finding that you're having trouble with those kinds of things, get the help that you need.
I have a question about that.
Please.
I have always done my own taxes. Do you think I'm losing money by not having a professional do them?
There's no way to know. I don't know what you know. If you do them on your own and you're very mindful of all of the deductions that you're eligible for, you may be doing just fine. If you're using something, again, you can go to IRS website and they will give you a link to where you can do your own taxes for free on their website. Most of those programs are pretty good as long as you have good records and you don't forget things. Like, for instance, my son is a business owner. If he has to throw out, if he buys milk for his coffee cart and he doesn't use it and he has to throw it out, the spoilage is a tax deduction for him. So you buy it, you sell it, but whatever you don't get to sell, he gets a loss for that. If people know those kinds of things, it can be fine to do your own taxes if you're willing to take the time to make sure that you're only paying what you are legally required to pay. So with regard to asset building, this is how you grow your wealth. Look at your financial goals. Assets are, of course, financial assets, right? Investment accounts, saving accounts, property, business interests. I have a nonprofit agency. I also have a for-profit business. And making sure that you are putting your money into assets that build wealth, right? That build wealth over time. One of the ways that you can do that is first define what matters most to you. Again, back to the wheel. If you're a renter and you want to buy your own home, understand what's important to you about having a home. Home ownership is not for everybody. And so when we just listen to the world, you're throwing away money to rent. No, actually, you're paying for a place to live. Right. And then when people say, well, buying a home, I'm saving on taxes. Well, no, actually, you're just getting back what you pay. What it's doing is helping build your net worth for sure, because you get to deduct the interest on the loan and you get to deduct the property taxes and you get to deduct some improvements. There's a reason. And so there are workshops at HUD.gov. They have workshops on home ownership classes. You can go to first-time home buyer classes and find out anything about different programs in your community for down payment assistance, below market rate homes. They're like in the community that I live in here, 15% of the houses here had to be set aside in order for the developer to build this. So they had to be set aside for below market buyers. And so it's so important to learn what's available and then do what you can to build your wealth and not assume that you can't. And then finally, asset protection. This is how you safeguard what you have. Most people think about insurance. That's important as well, but also renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, health insurance, life insurance if people are depending on you for an income, having an inventory of all of your assets. If my home burned down and my insurance company said, well, what was the value of the stuff you have in it? If I don't have an inventory, I don't know what to tell them. I'd have to sit there and try to remember. And here's the thing. If you're still hanging out on the futon that you had in college, you're not insuring what that cost. You're insuring for what it's going to cost you to replace it. And so people don't think that renter's insurance is that important. But if you are renting, your landlord is not required to pay for the things that go back into your home. They're required to rebuild the home. Their insurance will rebuild the home. but they're not going to pay for your stuff. And you're insuring for what it's going to take for you to replace it. So the value might not be that high, but the insurance that you want is what is it going to cost for you to replace the things that are in your home. And then finally, if you have children under the age of 18 or other adults who are depending on you, making sure that you have powers of attorney, making sure that you have guardianship arrangements. There's a website called Free Will. It's just that, a free will, and you can do guardianship arrangements for your children. And then it's also important to know when it's time to do it for yourself. I took care of my mother for years, or decades actually, before her death. And I handled all of her bills. I handled all of her health care. I handled all of that. And who would you want to speak for you if you were unable to speak for yourself? So that is financial planning month, right? There's so much. And so this is why I invite you to look at your wheel, prioritize these things, and then take one step. There's some steps here, but then there are also other steps, like you might get a debt reduction plan, or you might go to Free Will, or you might find out what your employer match is if you work for an employer that matches your retirement. Just do something. Do something that honors your best financial life.
Wow. Saundra, this was amazing. One thing that I take away from this, especially looking at the checklist, is you can take some control of your financial life. You can have a say in what's going on in your financial life. It doesn't have to happen to you. You can actually be an active participant in your financial life, regardless of what you make. Hearing you talk about all of this has allowed me to come to that realization. And I would not have been able to have that realization even 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So I think,
yay, you.
Thank you. And I dare say that there's probably somebody listening who needs to hear that as well. That regardless of what you're making, regardless of whether you are under earning, you can be an active participant in your financial life.
And be kind to yourself in the process. This system is not set up for us. It's just not. It's not. That doesn't mean that you can't be your own best advocate. It doesn't mean that you can't put yourself first. Your financial well-being will support all of the other areas of your well-being.
Saundra, I cannot thank you enough. I think I can speak for Jennifer in saying this, that Jennifer and I hold you in such high regard, and we have so much respect for you. And thank you so much for sharing all this with our listeners. I mean, this is hugely important information that they are getting the benefit of for free. So thank you so much. You are a fantastic human being. Thank you for what you do.
So much. I'm so glad that you two are doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I think it's so important. And just the transparency and the authenticity to let people see our humanness and that we're growing through all of this together, and just keep looking forward, face front. The only reason to look back is to gather the lesson. Everything else, face front.
Saundra, I have no more words. I'm glowing and sharing all of your, as you say, hard-earned wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.